Happy New Year, everybody. It's Drewberry back with another Snap or Pass video. And this time we're talking about Caiera. Now, I have no idea if this card is actually going to release next week. We're going to find out in the next few days. But as far as I know, with the DATAMINE information that we have to work with, it looks like this card is coming out next week alongside Skaar, the Season Pass card. So, as I do, I like to get the preview out before the card actually releases so that you guys know all the information that I can gather to decide whether you should purchase this card, because these cards are not cheap, especially this one that is ringing in as a Series 5 card to start the new year. 6,000 tokens or in the Spotlight Cash with one of these. Now, I've already kind of talked about this card, but I'm going to go over her once more. She is a 3/4 ongoing. Your 1 and 6 cost cards can't be destroyed. That is a crazy tech ability that I am sure is going to find a home in a variety of decks. But let's look at the Spotlight Cash opportunities here. You got High Evo and an amazing retro comic style variant if you already own High Evo. And then you got Nebula, a Series 5 card. She is not dropping when the series drops go live on January 9th. So she's staying at Series 5, which means I think this is a great Spotlight Cash to open up, because Nebula, in my opinion, is probably the best one drop in the game, or at least top 5. And then High Evo is just a lot of fun. And a lot of his decks, his evolutionary decks, tend to do pretty well. And you know what? One of those decks pairs really well with Caiera. So I think this is a great week to open up some Spotlight Caches if you got them saved up from 2023, because we're stepping in to 2024. Now, before we get to the mechanics of Caiera, I'm going to need you to snap, subscribe, and like the video, because that's going to let me know that you guys like this content and that you want more in 2024. I got some big plans that I can't wait to share with you guys, so you definitely want to stay subscribed and notified when that drops. So we're going to get there, but for now, let's get to the mechanics of Caiera. All right, so here's the mechanics, some pros and cons, but I just want to highlight that almost every single card in this season only has one variant right now. That could change next week. Hell, that could change in 2024, next year, I could almost say. But as of right now, yeah, she's only got one variant. It's a bit of a bummer, but it's a really cool one. It's like What If, and she's got Iron Man's head on a stick. Holy smokes, dude. She's meaning some business. She's out here trying to protect all these cards, but not Iron Man. She's out to destroy him. All right, so the mechanics. So with Caiera on the board, 1 and 6 cost cards can be played into Death's Domain, Altar of Death, Rickety Bridge, Vormir. The list goes on. You can even look at Murder World if you play a 1-drop there early enough and you drop Caiera on turn 3, protect them, right? So just that idea that with a big bonus of armor, which we're going to get to in a second, the differences between the two cards is that armor is great because you can play it into those locations, and then any card afterwards you play there is protected, will not be destroyed by that location's effect. Now, Caiera is effectively doing the same, but she's not protecting herself, and she's not protecting anything that doesn't cost 1 or 6. But those 1 or 6 cost cards, they're going to be safe. You can play them there and they're going to be fine, because by the time they flip, Caiera will protect it before it gets destroyed by the location. And next up, and this was a great comment on my last video for the Skaar video, is that destruction occurs left to right. So let's say you have Caiera in the middle location and you play Destroyer, but you have a 1-drop on the left and a 6-drop on the right, okay? So how I envision this occurring is that Destroyer is going to start with the left location and he's going to try and destroy that 1-drop, but he can't because Caiera is protecting it. But then he's going to move to the mid, he's going to destroy Caiera, so that by the time he gets to the right, he will be able to destroy that 6-drop that we have there. But that 1-drop from way early, he's going to be fine because he's on the left. But that 6-drop is going to get wrecked. So you gotta have to, like, I don't know how often that's actually gonna come into play, right? But if you do choose to play Destroyer with Caiera and 1 or 6 drop cards, you're gonna have to kind of pay attention to where you're positioning them so that you don't destroy the ones you want to actually keep, the ones that are actually gonna help you win the game. I think it'd be pretty cool strategy, but yeah, you're definitely going to destroy Caiera and the Destroyer becomes vulnerable. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Anyways, it's very interesting. And then another thing is that face down 1 and 6 cost cards will be destroyed by Alioth. Just because Caiera is going to protect them, she needs to see that they are 1 or 6 cost cards. And we know when cards are face down, they're basically doing nothing. They don't really have abilities. They don't have a cost. They don't have power. They're just nothing. They're just something that you hope will reveal and do its thing. But when it's face down, totally vulnerable to a Goliath, and it's just going to get destroyed. See you later. It doesn't matter what you are. And then Miles Morales in stature, and just any other card that can get reduced, have its cost reduced to 1 in hand. Well, it doesn't read as a 1 cost when it's on the board. We know this from Killmonger and stuff like this. So they are not going to be protected by Caiera. They can still be destroyed through other means. I don't know what cards could really manage to do that, but they're vulnerable to any other means of destruction. So just be wary of that. And that's pretty well it. I feel like if there's any rules that apply to armor, you can kind of look at those rules and apply them to Caiera. If there's any differences, let me know in the comments below. And if there's any other mechanical issues that you're confused with about this card, I'll do my best to answer that in the comments. And then in terms of the pros and the cons. So one of the craziest thing about this card is Shang-Chi and Killmonger, for the last year plus, since this game has been out, have been the dominant tech options to run in your deck, right? And with Killmonger, you just destroy any of the 1-drops, and then with Shang-Chi, you're destroying anything now with 10 or more power, which tends to be a lot of the 6-drop cards. So it's a big swing. If you don't have priority, your opponent plays that big card, and then you destroy it with Shang-Chi. I just did it recently with Blob. It was hilarious. So now with Caiera, their stocks, their value is going to drop significantly. And actually, I will go a step further and I will say destroy stocks are going to drop substantially. We look at cards like Killmonger and Shang-Chi, they are often run in destroy lists. Now, of course, you're not protecting your opponent's side of the board, so they can destroy things as much as they want to. But I think it's pretty valuable for destroy decks often to destroy the opposing side of the board. So, and probably not Gambit, but like that's an example off the top of my head. But mostly I'm thinking of Killmonger to get those death procs so that death becomes really cheap or null becomes really powerful, not only from your own cards being destroyed, but your opponent's. So I could see this card making quite a big splash for destroy in general, and then also more specifically allowing some of these crazy ramp decks or maybe even some zoo decks take off, join the top of the meta. So that's what you got to watch out for. You can play your 6 costs for free, essentially. You don't have to worry about it. You just drop that card. It's like, hey, like as long as you have priority, no problem. You just got to watch out for Goliath, and then everything else, fair game. You're going to be playing that Infinite with no fear. It's going to be great. And another thing about Caiera is that, so she's a defensive tech with offensive upside. I want to explain this just a little bit. So of course you can use this card to protect your cards, which is very, very valuable, right? But now you can play cards like Killmonger. I keep running back to Killmonger, but you can play Killmonger. You can destroy your opponent's side of the board, but not your own, which is kind of huge. Of course, you got to watch out the first week when this card comes out. Probably not the best thing to do because a lot of people might have it. And then, you know, it's just a mirror match and Killmonger's going to be useless. But I'm sure Killmonger will still, like, stock's going to go down, but he's still going to be a valuable card to put in decks. And yeah, I feel like that's a pretty decent play. Protect your side of the board, destroy theirs. That's great. The only other one I can really think of is Lady Deathstrike, who does a reciprocal effect, and you could look to try and make use of that. I don't know if that's really all that worth trying to pull off, but there is the future investment of always knowing that if there is a card that destroys on both sides of the board, that Caiera can possibly be used to save some of those 1-cost or 6-cost cards on your side while still disrupting your opponent's side. So some of the cons when it comes to this card. Okay, so I don't think there's all that many, but I'm going to be a little bit nitpicky. Okay, so the vanilla stat line, she's a 3/4. You know, that's not bad. It's really not that much of a con. When a card has an ability of this stature, that it typically ends up being a vanilla stat line card. Or, you know what? Usually it's less. You'll end up with like Mobius, who's a 3/3, and he's a tech option. And that's where my next point comes into play. Now, first of all, do I think that this card should be nerfed? No, okay? Like, it's just coming out. We have no idea how good it's going to be. If it's going to be too strong, if it's maybe going to come off a little bit weak. There's been time after time after time where we think a card is going to do this, and then it ends up like this. It's just one of those things. But a lot of people are already calling for nerfs or thinking that it's going to change after a week, blah, 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 because of the spotlight caches. Maybe it does. And what I get worried about is tech cards typically get attacked by the community and there's so much outrage that there is eventually a change in a month or two, because it's a little bit more sensitive when it comes to tech cards. It disrupts other players' game plans, or you can't really get that counter. And like, what if there's a deck that plays a 6-cost card, and if they play that 6-cost card, it's GG no matter what, right? Caiera is protecting that. Maybe Shang-Chi could have been the counter and could have been the answer, but she's stopping that from happening. So maybe down the line, she needs a nerf. Well, my prediction is not actually that her ability is going to change. A lot of people have been saying that maybe she's just going to be one lane specific, because Glenn once made a comment regarding that with the Luke Cage change, is that they don't really like board-wide effects. They want to keep it narrow, just affecting one location. Okay, fair, Glenn, but then you release this card, and it's like, what's that all about? And you know what? Maybe by the time the card actually is released, she's different, because I'm using a DATAMINE version. Fair game. I could get absolutely wrecked in that regard. So be it. I'm still putting this video out. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that I do not think that they would make this card a single location purposed protection card for the 1 in 6 costs, because it's way too close to armor. Yes, there's little nuance differences here and there, but it is just too close that I don't think we could have those two cards existing in the same game. It'd just be a little bit weird. And honestly, I would kind of hate it. Then it's like, why would you spend the 6,000 tokens? Wait until it becomes cheaper, because you got armor. You can just throw that into decks and make it work. So what I think is going to happen is she's going to become a 3/3 or a 4/3. That's my prediction. Drop a bit of power off of this card, even bring her to a 3/2 if she's too popular or powerful. I think that would be the best course of action. Or if it's really a problem, you make her a 4/3, because then it's a little bit later to play, later to protect those 1-drops, later to tempo into your 6 costs. So maybe that's what we got to do, but I'm definitely not suggesting that they nerf this card. I'm just kind of playing off some of the feedback I've already seen and heard. Okay, and lastly, like I kind of mentioned, armor versus Caiera. Let's check it out. All right, so who does it better, right? Caiera, she's protecting your side of the board, not your opponent's, just your side, but she's doing the whole damn row. She's doing 1, 2, 3, left, right, center. Whereas armor's just protecting one lane, but doing it on both sides, which can actually be pretty disruptive if you're running into a destroy deck or something of the like. So which one's better? One's a little bit cheaper, one's got a little bit more power. Honestly, I actually don't really think that it's worth comparing the two. I think they're both quite healthy in the state that they are. They sort of serve different purposes, and they do somewhat different things, and I think it's both fine. Yeah, I don't think you'd ever run a deck with both of these cards, but I like the option of choosing between one or the other, depending on the meta, depending on my deck, what the situation requires. So yeah, I like both of these cards. Now, the bigger question in my eyes is, would you spend 6,000 tokens to get Caiera when armor exists as a, I believe, Series 1 card? Much easier for new players to get. Probably could do the same thing in a lot of decks. Requires a little bit more skill to line up the location, know which locations you gotta win otherwise, then drop your 6-drop at armor's location. Whereas Caiera just kind of lets you do it for free, lets you play it wherever you need to. That is undoubtedly a huge upside to Caiera. Something that I missed with Blob is the opponent doesn't know what the power total of Blob is going to be. So that is a huge boost, because they're trying to do their calculations of their total power output, but they can't really correctly predict how strong that Blob will be, even if they know the card is going to be played there. So with Caiera, if you have Caiera on the board, okay, yeah, they're going to play a 6-drop most likely. That's what I predict on my final turn. They haven't played many 1-drops, but they got Caiera. But where? Where are they going to play it? It doesn't really matter, I guess. They could play it anywhere, wherever they need to win the game. That's going to be the bigger decision. But ultimately, they're not restricted to protecting it behind armor at a very specific location. So it's interesting. There's differences. There's pros and cons to each. I like having both in the game, but I could see an argument for a player strapped in the economy, not a lot of tokens, not a lot of spotlight caches, maybe not too excited about Caiera, saying, you know what? I'm going to pass. I'm going to look at all the decks that all my favorite content creators are brewing up, and I'm just going to slide in armor instead of Caiera and see what happens. I think that's going to work out more often than not, to be honest. But anyways, that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's get to some counters if you don't want to pick up this card. All right, so in the counter department, it's pretty clear cut, I think. Yeah, ongoing removal seems pretty good. Caiera's got an ongoing ability. If you remove it prior to that final turn, now their 6-drops are now vulnerable, or their 1-drops are now vulnerable to Killmonger. So using Enchantress, Rogue, and Echo. Those are basically the trio for ongoing removal. You know what? Echo, I could see being a pretty good option here, but Rogue must be the winner, right? You steal it, you protect your side, your opponent can't protect their side anymore. That just seems fantastic and a little bit easier to line up and play. So I like that a lot. Another one is Goliath. Of course, like I was mentioning earlier, those unrevealed cards are vulnerable to being destroyed even with Caiera on the board, meaning Goliath stocks kind of go up in this scenario. You just make sure you got priority, you're pretty good to go. You got to correctly predict where they're going to play that 6-drop though, which might be hard. But that's always, I personally find that pretty fun. Then you got Debris. That's a weird one, right? Why is Drew putting Debris here? Well, let me tell you, it's not always fun to have rocks on your side of the board, especially rocks that you can't get rid of, even if you're running like a destroy list or something like that, or like the rock was sent over to a destroyable location. I don't know, whatever the situation is. If you're protecting your rocks that aren't providing you power, that seems pretty annoying. You could even throw in like a Viper Hood combo here, or any of the junk archetype. Kind of annoying for Caiera, because all of a sudden you're protecting it on your side, which you might not really want to do. And lastly, Galactus. Galactus doesn't really care unless Caiera happens to be at the location where Galactus is played, but unlikely. So he's just going to destroy Caiera, and then you can't protect anything afterwards, which seems pretty nasty as well. Galactus obviously not being very popular, but could shock a few decks for sure. I could see a Galactus Goliath combo kind of taking off next week if you're running into a lot of, I don't know, Thanos, Blob, Caiera combos. Yeah, that's going to be a thing. We're going to talk about it in a second. But here we go with some DATAMINE combos, which I'm going to just gloss over real quick. And the reason I'm going over it quickly is because I just did a video on Skaar. Man, it's a bit of a weird time right now with the team being on holidays and not really knowing what's going to happen in the next week or two, really. So yeah, I think they're going to come out at the same time. So is it a DATAMINE card? I don't know, but they're pairing so well together. It's such a fantastic combination, which I have discovered. Thank you for everyone who commented on the last video. Now, this is Hulk's wife, or maybe hookup. I don't even know the details necessarily. But Skaar is the product of Caiera and Hulk. How about that? That's crazy. That blew my mind. Good on you, Hulk, and Skaar. Mom's gonna save the day. Don't worry about it, buddy. But you're a great combo. A little mother-son combination here, because Skaar's got a good amount of power. You want to probably play a lot of 6 costs if you can ramp up to them, or 1 cost, whatever it is. Maybe even a sunspot that you want to get to 10 power. I don't know. You tell me. But regardless, you play them together. Skaar's not going to get destroyed. It's going to be great. So it's a good combination. And then you could also look at Black Swan as a nice combination, the season pass card for February, because you're going to make it so that your 1 costs are all going to cost 0. So you could play like Caiera on turn 3 and then turn 5 Black Swan, so that turn 6 you can play your whole hand of 1-drops, and you know they're not going to get destroyed. That's pretty sick. There could be a deck brewing there that could be a lot of fun. Zoo, I would love to see Zoo, which is kind of just like a low curve deck, take off, but it hasn't really so far in Marvel Snap, so maybe we'll see someday. Okay, deck lists, let's get to it. All right, so this is a bit tough. So essentially, I think the number 1 deck is going to be Thanos, Blob, and Caiera. Now you could just look at like the top popular decks with Lockdown, all this stuff, whatever. I've seen them, I've played against them. They're pretty good. They're counterable, but they're pretty good. And I wanted to do a little bit of a different spin, so I got some movement package put in the Blob package, because I was thinking like, well, they're all high power cards. Most of them anyhow, like Silk, Spider-Man, Stegron. What is that? I know. And I'm also putting Daredevil with the Professor X, because my goal here is basically just to lock in a lane with Professor X so that we can turn 6 Blob. And if we can play Caiera in advance, if we can get some other power cards out there, if we can move Jeff to a Professor X location with Kraven at it, something like that, this seems like it could be pretty good. And there's a high enough power to buff up our Blob, and he's going to do just fine. The only thing I would worry about is space. It's going to get a little bit dicey with all those stones, all this movement and whatnot. So maybe it gets a little bit clunky and you can't destroy the stones. You can't get rid of them, which sometimes is a boost for Thanos. But I think ultimately, Caiera, Thanos, what a great pair. You're protecting not only Thanos himself, but also the Infinity Stones if you want to keep them out there. Like the Soul Stone is a very, powerful card in its own right, giving possibly -4 to the other side. It's very disruptive. And then you can look at another one like the Power Stone being a 1/3, which is a good stat line, and buffing up that Thanos. So you hope that it stays out there so you get that 20 power Thanos, who also, can't be destroyed. Seems pretty good. So anyways, maybe that's like a bit of a stretch in terms of deck building, and I'm trying to cook a little too hard, but I thought it'd be fun, a little bit of a different twist on this Thanos blob shenanigans, okay? So that's what I'm going for. Okay, next is Hulk first. So in the last video, I forgot to put magic. I'm like talking about this turn 7 combination, like I'm some kind of wizard who just, rolls limbo every single game. No, that was a mistake. It was just a graphical error. I accidentally put something else in there instead of magic. Anyways, I've revised it, and I think this is the deck that I've kind of fallen into that I think would be the most fun. I even put Infinite back in there because I don't know, I just feel like if you don't draw, let's say Hulk or something like that, you're probably going to want to play that Infinite and get him out there, or you keep him in the hand and you duplicate him with Moon Girl so that Devil Dino has some more power. I don't know, you could find a way. Maybe you cut that for something earlier curve because it doesn't have a lot of early curve. But I like this deck a lot. It's just a kind of a new version of She-Not, right? The She-Not deck, just mixed in with a few of the new cards. That's what I see it. Okay, and lastly, we got Snap Zoo. So I'm trying a zoo list here. And I was thinking, Blue Marvel, Kazar, those are good cards. They also have ongoing abilities. And a good combination is Bass, Mystique, and Iron Man. So I was like, okay, why don't I take that package, take the Zoo package of Blue Marvel, Kazar, who are also ongoing, who could reap the benefits of Mystique, and we put in Caiera to protect it. We put in Shannon the She-Devil, because come on, it's got to be your moment now. And then a lot of 1-drops that are just good value. Probably the most questionable one is Ant-Man, but man, if you hit Ant-Man with Bass and you get him to a full location, that's a high power card that's not getting destroyed. I like it a lot. And then Nebula, obviously, like I was saying, one of the better 1-drops in the game. I omitted Sunspot here because I thought, well, you know what, we're probably going to be playing out our curve pretty frequently. As long as we draw enough cards, we're going to be playing a lot of cards, especially if we got Kitty Pryde, who's going to be played over and over and over again. We can use Nico to create a demon or draw some cards, which is very important. Or really any of her spells are going to help out, giving power, doubling power. I'm here for all of it. Shanna, the crazy high roll, but you know what? She's going to fill the board out a little bit for us. She's going to give us those 1-drops that we can buff. She's going to give us that power at the Iron Man location that we kind of need. I kind of like it. I kind of like this deck. I think it could be a lot of fun. But what I worry about is that this kind of deck, while it can be fun, while it can kind of sometimes get to decent power totals, it usually just gets totally wrecked by decks like the Blobstone deck that can just get to insane amount of power totals off of the back of like one card. Looking at you, Blob. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue. Maybe we got to look into Tekken like a Shang-Chi or something like that. But again, the problem there is that this card is going to be popular next week. So I don't know. It's a rough one. But there you go. Those are the deck lists. Now, is Caiera a snap or a pass? Kicking off this new year with a snap. Okay, even Caiera a snap. I feel like this is like a must snap, to be honest. The only exception I would say is if you're a little bit tight on resources, which is totally fair. This game is not cheap. And you have armor. And you're just looking to maybe see. Seriously, I think the best piece of advice is to wait. Take those lists that the creators are sharing with you and saying that they have like 70-80% win rates, put in armor over Caiera and see if you can achieve a similar win rate, because it's most likely going to have a similar effect, or in some instances do the same thing. So I think it's worth trying that out before you buy this card. That's my biggest piece of advice. But otherwise, I could see this being, kind of like what Mobius was in September, how he kind of flipped the meta on its head because of his release. I think Caiera could do something similar and just make a few decks an actual problem, like a problem that is going to require nerfs to something somehow, which is a bit concerning to start the new year. But there you go. Okay, that's Caiera. That is going to be the last video from old Drewberry in 2023. I hope you're having a good new year. You're probably watching this in 2024. The future, how is it? Let me know. I hope it's great, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a great New Year's Eve. All right, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.